Hey, I'm meteorologist Ian Kowalski, and we're back with this episode of Weather Eye. And this week, I brought a guest with us to start out our show. It's our very own Kyle Kawamoto. Kyle, how you doing?
Good, Ian. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, well, happy to have you, Kyle. And recently, like everyone else, of course, we were stuck in this record-setting heat. We broke, in fact, a record just a couple days ago, gone up to 93 degrees, new daytime high record. And now, of course, we've just barely gotten out of those 90s, still in the 80s today. Kyle, how have you been handling the heat?
Dressing properly, making sure I have enough water, making sure you know what you're going into the day. You know what you got to prepare for.
Yeah, and see, Kyle's more responsible than I am because I've been doing not as good of a job as I would personally have liked to. I've been low on the sunscreen, and I went out for a live shot a few days ago, and I came back looking like how would you describe me? Like a cherry tomato?
Sure. Let's go with that.
Okay. Wow, it was even worse than that. Goodness, I really messed up. But point is, it's very easy to sunburn outside very recently. You have to be drinking your water and getting long sleeve shirts. Maybe a dress shirt wouldn't quite do the job. You might still get a little bit sweaty. But point is, no one's been able to escape this heat, Kyle. And so much so that it's bringing up concerns, not only for me as a meteorologist, of course, when I look at those statistics, you don't necessarily want to see us breaking any records, really. You want us to be near those averages. And then on top of that, of course, in the agricultural community, we've talked a lot on this show about how things like hay prices have already begun to skyrocket. And of course, the actual crop yield is in somewhat of a bit of a flux right now because of this ongoing drought. We need more rain before we get into the heat of summer. And
so you were talking about moisture. We need some moisture coming in, but you've been talking. I've been following your forecast every single day, and you're talking about we're supposed to be getting some in the very near future.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kyle, we are supposed to get a little bit coming up this weekend on Sunday, a little bit of light rainfall, but it's certainly nothing what we're going to need because, of course, statewide, when it comes to our snowpack, we're only around 14% right now, which is not good. 14% of average. Keep that in mind. And on top of that, when you actually look at on top of the rain yield that we've seen, because it's not just the snow. Even if we get the snow in and of itself, if it's this warm, of course, it just melts.
We've been tracking this thing since basically when the snow was actually coming in during the wintertime, and everyone, even the community, was noticing that this is not normal. This is not something that we should be seeing right now, because even when we're on the western slope, we should be seeing plentiful snow, especially on the mesa.
Yeah.
And the water levels, I've been hearing from ag producers, community members, even stressing how they've seen the Colorado River going extremely low, and it's not really good to see, especially when you're going over Broadway going towards the Redlands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't even have to be super locked into these statistics, like talking about that. You can just go outside and see for yourself. When I go on my runs down by the river, it's very easy to see that we're just so low on that water buildup right now. And you've been covering this for a long time this season. You kind of were at the start of it earlier on when we, kind of got into the winter. We were already looking a little bit dry, but there's still, of course, we like to hold out. We like to be a bit optimistic, but it just ultimately didn't end up coming. And you're on the show today because you actually talked to the National Weather Service earlier on today, correct?
Mm-hmm. I spoke with a meteorologist over at the National Weather Service to, get more details about this extreme weather, if it's going to be sticking around or not.
Mm-hmm. And so, Kyle, we're going to play a clip from your interview right now. Just take a look at some of this heat that we've seen over the past few days was just historic. Let's take a look.
Temperatures recently have been around 15 to 20 degrees above normal. We just hit a record high on Tuesday of 94, which broke our old record of 92. So, yeah, this is uncommon for May, and we've seen these near record high temperatures and recent warmth due to a ridge of high pressure that's been over the region pretty much for the last week or so. So we've been in this drier pattern, so it's resulted in warmer than normal temperatures.
Do you think, from what he was talking about and from your forecast, do you think that high pressure is really going to be kicking in more of that heat coming here to the Grand Valley?
Fortunately, we are looking like we're going to be on the back end of that as over the next couple of days. The ridge is starting to break down. In fact, it already has. We're stuck in zonal flow right now. And what zonal flow means is it's just when those winds go straight from west to east. very horizontally across the earth. And what that means is usually our pattern gets a bit more stable. That's why we're stuck in these 80s as we move into today on Thursday and tomorrow on Friday, as we get into the kind of the back half of May. But already then it starts to break down a bit more. And we talked about that rainfall coming up on Sunday. And what that's going to mean for us is a lot cooler temperatures too. We're finally allowing some of that colder air coming down from the north to get us even into the 60s here in Grand Junction. Are you looking forward to that?
I am definitely looking forward to it. Hopefully, it'll be a little bit more moisture going into the summer. I know, being here in Colorado, being here for about almost 2 years, seeing that every amount of moisture counts, especially during this time of the year when it's like fire season, because no one wants to see any wildfires going up over blazes especially around here on the western slope. It's very scary to see.
Yeah, it's again, it's not a very good setup for the summer, unfortunately. Again, with the snowpack being low, those reservations, especially on the Front Range, they're actually doing a lot worse than us. Our reservoirs are pretty much filled up, but when you don't have that snowpack, it's still, when you go through those reserves a lot quicker, the quicker our warming, the quicker we run out, of course. And so if we don't make that up in terms of a very wet year, which fortunately we are coming up to an El Nino this summer, and that's overall a good thing for Colorado rainfall. Hoping that comes as soon as possible. It's looking like generally the forecasts are moving that up, which is good. It's exactly what we want to see. But we do have to make up for that drought with rainfall. And again, it looks just very difficult to do at this point. Kyle, is there anything else that you learned from your interview with the National Weather Service earlier on today?
Just about just being prepared, especially for fire season that, like we were just talking about, it is here. And you just always want to be making sure you're prepared, because also May is Wildfire Prevention Month. So it's always best to be aware, especially if you're driving along I-70, that, not dragging your chains, not throwing cigarette butts out of the window, because any little thing could basically set off a fire. It could be even a little piece of glass could set off a fire, and you just don't want to do that, especially as you're talking about being in this drought. It's just anything could set off that fire like nothing.
Yeah, it really is those micro things that really start to build up when you get into this very dry fire weather seasons here on the western slope. I'm sure many of you at home know that, but overall it is, again, even a small piece of glass. And we do kind of see this changes, or I covered earlier on, with city policy to back that up too, because we talked about earlier on, a lot of people are disappointed because the city is going to start changing where they're watering around the parks areas. For instance, only focusing on areas with a lot of traffic, that the grass is stomped on a lot, trees, shrubs, things that generally consume a lot more water. And so, of course, the beautification of the city takes a toll. A lot of brown grass coming up soon.
Especially if you were going on those golf courses about, let's see, like a couple months ago. I know that, especially if you're looking to drive down the fairway, it was not looking as pleasant. Especially, I noticed at Chipeta, a couple other golf courses. I'm not 100% sure, but I know from what I've seen, especially, I forgot, it's the main one that's off of 12th and North, but I think Lincoln Park. I know that one was not as healthy for some time, but they're starting to manage where they can bring that green grass back. Yeah. But it's a very interesting time. So we'll have to see what Mother Nature has in store for us. I know a couple years ago when I came here, it was monsoon season. So hopefully that monsoons will bring a little bit of extra moisture. I know you talked about the El Nino, if that's correct, what I was understanding. Yes, yeah. So what are you seeing in that?
So what I'm seeing in that is overall it leads to a change in the jet stream pattern. And what that means is, those winds at the upper levels, all the way up thousands of feet in the air, have a huge effect on us here at the surface too. And so when that changes, and overall, to put a very, very brief explanation of El Nino, there's changes within the ocean temperatures that lead to the jet stream changing, because our atmosphere is very, very tightly linked at all levels. And when that changes, it changes that positioning, moves it a bit further north or a bit further south, and that has a huge effect on the United States. And what this upcoming El Nino pattern will do is it will allow us to get more of that Pacific moisture, and we're going to get less of those high pressure systems that we've seen all the time over the past year come up from the southwest, going over the southern portion of California into Arizona and New Mexico, and we get stuck in there with that on the western slope, a whole lot less of those and more instead of those systems coming down from around Seattle and the Canada border, those cold fronts coming that area, bringing moisture along with them. We're going to get a lot more of that instead of, again, just big heat domes that we've been stuck in forever now. Personally, Kyle, this is just my opinion, but I'm tired of saying the word historic. I would like a normal upcoming season here in Grand Junction, Delta, Montrose, and all of the western slope, or maybe even a slightly wet one. I think we could all take at this point because again we have a whole lot of drought to make up for at this point, with much of Mesa County in the extreme drought zone and the central portion of the western slope putting up north into the Park Range into the exceptional drought zone, which is the highest on that drought scale. So over the next few days, though, fortunately, we do have that rain coming. Very excited about that.
Okay. I know that since the, big holidays are coming up, we have Memorial Day that's coming up right around the corner. Then you have 4th of July. And many of the fire officials even talked about not having fireworks here. And I know that's one of the big things that I remember growing up as a kid, that was always the best time for 4th of July. So you always go up and see those fireworks, but the city we're possibly not going to have any fireworks, and it's also because of the dry conditions that are out there. What are we seeing going in, at least in the near future?
Yeah, Kyle, it's another instance of the city having to be proactive, like we talked about with sprinklers or on the grass around the city. That's responsible water management. And at the same time, unfortunately, although it may not be as fun, we do have to, of course, look at what are those very easy sources of causing fires, and fireworks are one of those. So we have already had actually a fireworks sales ban issued here in Western Colorado, specifically here in Grand Junction. And our own Jeff Hinkle has done some reporting on that. So, Kyle, we're going to say goodbye to you, unfortunately. So thank you for coming on for this half of the show.
Well, thank you for having me. And also, for more on the story that from the National Weather Service I did, or we talked about, it's going to be on our website, westernslopenow.com. So any of the community members, they can check it out and see how there are many different tips, including not having pets in the car. You can also tips from Excel to save money, especially with air conditioning, and all, etc., just to be involved with what's going on with the heat.
Yeah. Okay, so make sure to check that out on our website. So, Kyle, again, thank you for coming on today. And we're going to go to Jeff Hinkle's package, our very own Jeff. He's going to be talking about that fireworks ban coming up here in a little bit. And then once we come back after the break, we'll go into our local and national weather. And, yes, talk about that, at least a little bit of rainfall coming up this weekend. So we'll be back here in a moment.
I move to adopt consent agenda item number 5A, a resolution to ban the sale or trade of fireworks.
The motion passes 4-3.
That's what it sounded like as the Grand Junction City Council banned the sale of fireworks within city limits amid exceptional drought conditions and lack of precipitation, on top of an unprecedented amount of red flag warnings.
Removing fireworks from that equation is definitely our preference as a fire department. And of course, we're very pleased with council's decision.
As for the Memorial Day fireworks display at the upcoming JUCO World Series, the fire department is still unsure if it will happen, but a drone show may be a safer alternative if the fireworks get canceled. And for those people who choose to go elsewhere to buy illegal fireworks,
these are typically fireworks that have always been illegal. It's if they go up or if they blow up. So bottle rockets or fireworks of any kind that shoot into the air and then you don't know where they go and they explode. That is a tremendous danger to our community, that they can literally land anywhere.
But now with the new resolution passed, even the sale of ground fireworks like sparklers and ground spinners is banned. The Grand Junction Fire Department is trying to stop the problem before it even begins.
So in years past, a firework ban has come in after fireworks have already been sold in our community, and this year we're getting ahead of that. One of the most significant fires we responded to as a fire agency was a firework-caused fire down at Connected Lakes that destroyed acres of infrastructure and threatened a whole housing division.
Jeff Hinkle, KREX News.
Hey, I'm meteorologist Ian Kowalski. Happy to be back with you again after the break. Before, we were talking to our own Kyle Kawamoto. I was happy to have him on here today where he talked about that extreme heat and interviewed the National Weather Service. And so now we're just left and stuck with that zone of high pressure as we move to the next few days. It's May the 14th, and earlier on this week, we were breaking records. Got into the low 90s, and we're not even in June yet. It was, unfortunately, no matter where you went, you were stuck in that heat too. I talked briefly about how I went out for a live shot at work, and that was at Fruita Monuments graduation at Stoker Stadium, and it was rough. Those poor kids too, they had on their cap and gowns, and while I'm sure they were very happy to have earned that, and again, congratulations to all those graduates. Oh, I cannot imagine wearing that in that heat. Ooh, it must have been rough, but the color was blue, fortunately. If they were all black, that would have been wow. But many of people, unfortunately, in the stands too, just looked like they were baking. And so the point is, no matter where you're going, I mean, you're getting that tan unless you're putting on a lot of sunscreen, being very safe with how you go outside. We're in heat stroke territory, unfortunately, with all of that warmth and how dry it is. So again, you do want to put on your sunscreen, your long sleeve shirts, and you're drinking plenty of water. You have to say it over and over again. I know. But we all, let's face it, even I do. I mess up with those things from time to time. I forget to put on sunscreen every now and then. And so you gotta give yourself those reminders. So I hope I can help you at least a little bit to stay safe over the next few days. But there is relief and change coming in our forecast. Once we get into early next week, there is actually going to be some light rainfall here in Grand Junction and much cooler temperatures. In fact, well below average into the 60s. So we'll be talking about that later on in the show. Let's take a look at national weather right now, because we do have a good amount of severe weather coming up over these next few hours here, particularly in that zone of yellow that we're looking at here on our chart. This is our severe thunderstorm warning area. And you see these little zones here too. That's our air quality watch. That's another thing we're going to be talking about probably very soon here in the Western Slope, where we do have all that dust kicked up and it's so hot that you do get those things like ozone warnings, for instance, where a lot of the particles get trapped right over you. So that's another thing to be thinking about, but we see all these little orange dots here on the screen. These are your severe thunderstorm warnings. So this is a little new tool we're going to be using. Let me add in a little bit more to see this reflectivity here. National radar, and then there we go. We are looking here at our national radar, U.S. radar. There we go. Now we can see those storms coming in across the not the Western Slope. I'm looking at this is Panhandle of Texas. You say it so often, sometimes you really do get used to just saying the same thing over and over again, especially in the heat. Man, there's only so many ways you can say sunny. That's I've been experiencing that for myself for the past few days. So where are thunderstorms at right now? These severe thunderstorms have been issued. Again, here it is, severe thunderstorm warning in those orange blocks that you're seeing in the severe thunderstorm watch area. Right now down towards Lubbock, heading towards the east, and then you look a little bit further towards Amarillo here. And that's where a lot of those isolated storms are going to be popping up to start, but they are going to move a bit further north into Oklahoma as we get later on into the day. And we can use our tools here too to even show where these storms are going to be headed. So let's take a look. And then if I drag out from here, say how long is it going to take for us to get towards the border here in Oklahoma? About 147 miles. You got another, at the least amount, at the very tip, you got another 15 minutes or so by the time you get to Wheeler. Around here, the border, you got around another 25 minutes. So these are just cool little tools we like to use here as a meteorologist to show you what's actually happening, where those storms are headed. But there's a lot of other ways you can look at it too. So let's zoom out a little bit more. Again, you can see here, it's heading into Oklahoma. And then at the same time, you do have this area going into Kansas too, getting a little bit towards the west of Wichita. And this is just our earliest warning. Again, a lot of the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center's worries are in this area too. Once you go Oklahoma City up towards into Kansas, a little bit going down towards El Paso and towards the Mexico border too. So let's use another tool right here to kind of show you what we're looking at. What are the main threats that we're thinking about today? Well, it's not going to be tornadoes. You know, you need a lot of wind shear to back that up, and you need a certain amount of energy. And while that energy is certainly there, we aren't really seeing the shear build up to be this big tornado event necessarily, but the clouds are going to get high enough into the air, severe enough thunderstorms. What's that mean? Well, the taller the cloud, the more likely it is to produce that hail with those storms. So let's take a look at what hail is going to look like here on our little map here behind me. We're going to look at our national hail tool. Here we go. So here's our zone of hail right here. Seeing that yellow zone, that dot, that's where they're expecting the most hail. And like we talked about, it's not just in that area that we're seeing that severe thunderstorm watch, but it's going north into Kansas and portions of Oklahoma. Again, that's where it's still on kind of on the earliest side of this event ongoing right now. And at the same time, we look at tornado. There's nothing you're going to see going on right here because, again, there's just not that sheer ongoing. You are mostly thinking about that hail and, of course, some winds that are beyond going the next few days. So strong gusts that we are looking at here in that yellow zone. So I just wanted to show you that there. And here's our overall SBC outlook. Like we talked about, stretching from that panhandle zone as you get up north and into Kansas, kind of skirting around Oklahoma City where you're expecting the strongest of those storms. That's just the track of, again, the dry line going on out there. Again, it's those areas between air that has a lot of moisture and air that has very little at all. And that's enough to get those storms to rise up into the air along that line. And then they just travel on over towards the east. They get that momentum and head on over into, again, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. Very common event out there that we don't see too much here on the western slope just because we're mostly frontal based or an actual low pressure system. You don't see that divide and that moisture until, of course, you get over towards the front range, you hit the continental divide, and then you start to get some more similar mechanics, at least meteorologically, to that. So there's our look at our national radar right now. We'll be looking at that storm. I saw meteorologists in the area are watching it as we move into the evening, but it is mostly a hail event as we go into the next few days here. And now we're going to be taking another look again at our local forecast. So I did tease you a little bit with some rain, but of course we are still in that drought zone that you don't necessarily want to see here in the western slope. The extreme drought here in Mesa County is going to be ongoing, but don't let that stop you because we do have a little bit of a change, and I know we're going to be still going into tonight. Again, today's the 14th, where you do see those very warm temperatures, but early next week, we're going well below into even the 70s and 60s. So let's take a look at our future cast tonight. Again, you're getting lows in the 60s and 50s, and even if you're getting out earlier on in the day, it's going to be way warmer than we do expect for this time of year. 87 in Grand Junction for tomorrow at 2 p.m., 85 in Delta, 79 in Paonia. So tomorrow on the 15th, starting off your weekend. And then you see right here, it's starting to see a little bit of moisture introduced into our area. There's going to be a big front coming our direction. And ahead of that, the tilt of our winds is going to mean we're actually going to see some moisture introduced into our atmosphere. But there's really no rainfall expected for Friday night anywhere in the valley. It's just some light stuff of at elevation. It's not going to be until you get to Saturday night. And in the early morning, you're seeing it's trying to get a thunderstorm or two going up towards the Grand Mesa, but we're not really expecting much measurable precipitation until you get into the late afternoon and nighttime hours in Saturday when that front gets a lot closer. Saturday also is a day we're looking at some fire weather potential. We saw those gusts up to 40 miles per hour earlier on this week. It's going to look very similar as that front gets closer towards us on Saturday. So again, another day where we're watching for very easily being able to start sparks and get some fire going. Saturday, 10 p.m. Here's what we're looking at. Those temperatures are going to start to cool down a little bit, but they're warm enough where you still get additional energy. So you see those big blobs of yellow. That's your thunderstorms mixed in there. So unfortunately, again, lightning, not something you necessarily want with that moisture. We'd rather just have a lot of persistent rainfall here on the western slope. But Sunday does look like a day when you're actually awake. I know you're seeing a little bit of a break here, and then it comes right back as that front actually really starts to set in as you get into Sunday afternoon. This is when I'm thinking, again, our model's a little bit less aggressive than I will be personally. Here you go. You're starting to see it once you get to Sunday night. That's when that rain really starts to pop up here in the western slope. I do expect some light rainfall here in Grand Junction, Delta Montrose, in the valleys. I know our model here is trying to skirt it around the valleys because our localized heat dome, you hear that a lot. It gets so warm here in Grand Junction that storms like to skirt around us, but right now, I think that cold front is going to start to break us down as we move into Monday night, like you're seeing right here. The heat starts to dissipate, becomes more consistent between the tops of the mountains and the lower valleys, and that's what allows that rain to finally get to us here in Junction, Delta Montrose, with thunderstorms built in there, and cold enough where we'll actually be seeing some snowfall at elevation. You see that big wave up towards the central portion of the divide. No snow here in the valleys, though. We'll be a bit too warm for that. And then Monday, you could see a little bit carrying on into the morning, and then that's going to be the end. And we do see a little bit longer as you move into our forecast. A little bit more moisture coming in the midweek. of next week, but that's a little bit shaky right now. The models have been all over the place on where it's actually placing a second front. So we'll be watching for that very closely, but that's out of range of our future cast for now. And of course, looking at our regional cast, it's going to be on the front range before we get it here. No surprise there. You have those mountains acting on that moisture a little bit sooner than we're going to see it in a big way. And of course, towards the northwestern corner of the state where you get those up into the high country, taking your break Saturday morning, and then it pops up more and more. So if you're traveling over towards the east, once you get on towards the front range over the weekend, do keep in mind you can see some rain, you can see thunderstorms, especially Saturday night. Maybe not be the best time to be on the roads and along I-70, so you're going to want to take some cautions there. And then again, that second wave, as that front gets a lot closer, the low starts to take a bit of a further dip towards the south, and then you see this wave here. And again, this is what I really think is going to be getting towards us here in the valleys, especially once we get to Sunday night into Monday morning, and then a big old wave of rain on the front range. Nobody's complaining about that. We've needed it for a long time now. And then pretty similar as you look at our future cast, see those storms popping up that we were talking about on our national radar here just a moment ago, and they're heading on over towards the east and building up a little bit more down towards Dallas, over towards Texas, and along Oklahoma, and then it becomes storms in the Midwest. And then, of course, back in the west where we're looking at, you start to see that low dip a bit further towards the south and the cold front associated with it. And then that second wave as we get the other side of the wind rotation over the next few days here. So there's our time lapse briefly over the last few days. This one's taken from last week. Just clouds, light clouds. It was kind of the most we were really seeing over the past few days here. But thank you for watching this episode of Weather Eye. I'm meteorologist Ian Kowalski. Here's my email. If you say get some of the rain over the weekend and you get a nice picture of a cloud, feel free to email it to me. I'd be happy to feature it here on the show, as well as answer any weather questions you at home may have or geography questions about us here on the Western Slope. So thank you very much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed our little chat with Kyle earlier on, and I hope you are looking forward to actually getting at least a little bit of rainfall here in Western Colorado coming up on the weekend. Although, again, I'm sure many of you have outdoor weekend plans that you might be in a little bit of jeopardy, so I am sorry about that. But we'll be talking more weather later on next week in our episode.